Thank you. So I just want us to start off by saying a small caveat that I'm neither a project nor a tech company. I'm a product company. And by product company, I don't mean any product. I mean it will be the largest asset class in the world. My name is Michael, and I have 20 years experience in climate finance and carbon markets. And no disrespect to anybody else in the room or here, I've rarely been wrong when I've said something. And this is why I think 18 months ago, the Coalition for Rainforest Nations, they called me. And they said, Michael, we have a problem. We have all these rainforest nations who are doing fantastic work to reduce their deforestation at speed and scale. And yet no one knows about us, and we cannot access the capital markets. And so this is precisely what I've done over the last 10 months with our team and my team. We spent about 10 months due diligence in creating and developing a new institutional asset class, which in my opinion will become the largest asset class in the world. And just to prove it, last month I co-wrote the first white paper with the Chief Investment Officer of Deutsche Bank about sovereign carbon. So if you want to learn more about it, you can download it. It's online on Deutsche Bank's website, and you can see what this is about. So don't worry about the presentation. I can send it to you if you want it. I just want to explain a bit about how you create and develop and hopefully sell sovereign carbon. So what do you need to do first? You need the source. So I'm not going to go into all the details about what rainforests are and the advantages that they provide, not to the nations and just to the rainforest nations, but to everyone on the globe. Firstly, it is by far and away, the largest source of carbon removals in the world, at the tune of about 6 gigatons every year. And yet not one single one of you, maybe someone or a few people, are paying for this. And if you are paying for this, you're probably not paying the right price. Secondly, more than 50% of all life, birds, mammals, fish, live in rainforests in South America, in Africa, and in Southeast Asia. Just as an example, in Papua New Guinea, maybe you know this country, it's in Southeast Asia, there's about 6,000 species of orchids. Try to name 6 species of orchids that you may have seen or know. There's more than 600 species of fish just in one country. And there's about 700 species of birds in just that country. I challenged any of you to name 10, species of birds in your country. And so this all biodiversity, all this rainforest, all this carbon removal aren't being paid for at the moment. I'm not going to go into the food production, simply because everyone is used to having food on their plate and you have no idea where it comes from. Well, guess what? 80% of all the food that you've consumed in your life comes from the rainforest, not just in production, but originally, whether it's coffee, pineapple, bananas, palm oil, etc., etc. I can go on and on. Potatoes, avocados, all come from the rainforests. Now, I'm not making this up. I like science. This is the IPCC report that was launched in 2018 to basically say quite a number of things, but I'm just going to focus on one. And it's that part, the AFLU, which is basically nature. If you do not protect and reverse deforestation globally, there is zero chance that we will meet the Paris Agreement, and especially the 1.5-degree target. I'm going to skip this finance part because it's more for institutional investors. I'm going to come up to this. This basically states one thing, that on the blue side, the light blue side, you have what is known as the regulated market, carbon markets, which corresponds to about 20 to 21% of global emissions. That little orange segment is what is known as the voluntary carbon markets. And I think a lot of you know what this is. These are carbon credits that are created, or carbon offsets that are created voluntarily from a project in a particular country. 79% of all global emissions are not covered. Neither in the regulated market nor in the voluntary carbon markets. Now, I am totally for scaling up the voluntary carbon markets. But let's just imagine that in 2 years or 4 years, we multiply that number by 10. That's just 8%. When we've had 15 years, I can go back to 20 years, of voluntary carbon market growth and development. Here on the left side, this is to prove that about 50 countries from the United Nations, from the UNFCCC, as part of the COP, have issued 9 billion tons of carbon. 9 billion tons. And yet, 297 million tons have only been purchased and retired. And when you look at the voluntary carbon markets, this is what it looks like. As you can probably see, there's a huge discrepancy between what the country actually does, what is retired, and what the voluntary market represents. So, how do you structure this new institutional asset class? Well, first of all, you have to understand the Paris Agreement. If you don't understand the Paris Agreement, there will be very little chance that you will understand how to institutionalize and structure this product. On the left side, this is what we've discovered. That these are the 10 main points that cover the sovereign carbon. I'm not going to go into details. It's all due diligence. You can double-click on any of these points and basically figure out that they cover the country's NDCs, the global accounting system, as well as the national inventory. On the right side, you have some of the most important articles of the Paris Agreement, including Article 5, which is basically the REDD+ mechanism. So this is just to show you that while we were doing our due diligence with our financial partners and our audit partners, we were able to correspond what a sovereign carbon credit should be as part of the Paris Agreement and not as part of the voluntary carbon markets. Once again, I'm not going to bore you there because there's a lot of information. What I wanted to show you is that in the middle part, this is how you create 1 unit of sovereign carbon. There's a very, very big due diligence process that it takes about 12 steps, and it's to show you that there's a proper United Nations approved system, you call it what you want, MRV, to generate a unit of sovereign carbon. And to the right is just to show you all the pre-2021 vintage that have been issued by these countries, from Papua New Guinea to Costa Rica at the bottom. So this is what we did. we're sourcing, we're structuring, and we're selling. Sourcing comes from the Coalition for Rainforest Nations. So we represent more than 50 countries that are in the coalition. All of this is built on capacity building, figuring out, facilitating policy, and of course, trying to be Paris Agreement compliant. Because a lot of these countries don't have the resources to make that first step happen. On the second part, this is where most of the work happens, which is the institutionalizing of the product. And so this is why you have a proper registry, which is IHS Market, now known as S&P Global, and you have advisory, legal, you have a proper platform, you have the ratings, and you have the accounting. Once again, these partners are on board to institutionalize the product, not to make it a voluntary carbon asset. And on the right side, this is where the fun starts, and this is where we're at the moment. It's all about the selling. And it's not just through banks. Although we have many bank partners, most of the buyers or investors will be the big corporates, especially in the oil and gas industry, but also in the forestry, and also in the food and drinks industry. So this is just to show you that it works. These numbers, these MRV numbers are from Papua New Guinea. And as you can tell, this is when the Paris Agreement was signed in 2015. And this was 2 years ago. We have the numbers from last year, but we didn't put them. But this is to show you that it works. That for the last 5 or 6 years, Papua New Guinea have been able to reduce their deforestation by more than 50%. So 50% is a huge number, especially when you know that beforehand, on the left side, the deforestation kept on increasing and increasing at an alarming rate. So a lot of people ask me about, oh yeah, carbon credit, carbon. It's not just about the carbon. It's about the biodiversity safeguards and the SDG safeguards, which were all signed in Cancun. And these are some of the safeguards that were signed by Papua New Guinea to prove that when you're buying an actual sovereign carbon, you get all this for free. All this is discounted, whether it's for the indigenous people that are doing the actual job on the ground, or whether it's to protect the biodiversity based on national policy and international policy based on the Convention of Biodiversity. So once again, it's to prove that it's not just about the carbon, but it's about all the other stuff that come in to play as benefits, but once again, they are not priced into the price of carbon. This is where we're at. We were at COP27 for 2 weeks, and we were negotiating with and on behalf of about 50 countries. And right now, we're on our journey to basically issue sovereign carbon, but also proper ITMOs by the end of this year. These are all the benefits from a corporate or investor perspective. They range from completely de-risking your position, your climate regulation or your climate plan, to reputational and franchise risks, to shareholder activism, or to any legal actions that will be taken against you based on your climate position. So these are all the media articles that came about us in the last 3 or 4 months. We've got new ones as well, but I couldn't put them all. But this is to just say that we're ready to play, and we're ready to issue and structure, but also sell sovereign carbon globally onto the carbon markets. And that's it for me. Thank you.